Hey, all right. So this week we're well into the semester, week 4. What we're going to go through this week is really similar to last week. You'll have a batch of lecture videos to watch. They're shorter than last time, so that's your good news. And then you'll have a lab video and the Connect assignment to do. We also have some really important stuff coming up next week, so I'm going to talk about that too. But first, let's go through this week. We have worked our way up. Last week when we went through chapters 2, 3, and 4, I don't know if you remember in chapter 1, we talked about the way living things were organized, and we started subatomic particles and atoms and molecules, and we worked our way up to cells and tissues and all that. So that's kind of how we've been doing the chapters. Chapter 2 was on chemistry, chapter 3 was on cells, and then a group of cells that work together are known as tissue. So that's our next chapter. So chapter 5. It's going to talk about different types of tissues in your body. Your body's made up of tons of different types of tissues. So what we're going to do is look at some of the major ones in your body, and we'll talk about the different categories or different types of tissues. So I would watch that lecture first. I've got it split up into different sections like I have the other ones. So you'll have 2 or 3 parts, 3 or 4 parts to watch for the tissues. After you have done that, you don't have to do this all at once. It's an online class. Spread it out however it works with your schedule. But you have a tissues lab video to watch. Now, I want you to watch that. I know that they're both on tissues, but don't feel like I'll watch the lectures. I can just skip that. Because the way we're splitting this up, the thing in the lecture videos, that's the material that you're going to see on the lecture test, like the multiple choice questions where you've got to answer things that we talked about in the lectures. The lab videos are the material that you're going to see on the lab exams. That should make sense, I guess. So in this one, I made a video where I've got a PowerPoint, and you've got a copy of the PowerPoint too if you go to the lab tab. But it's going to pull up pictures of all the tissues that you need to know. And I'm going to give you tips on how to learn them. Like, these are their characteristics on the lab test. This is what you need to be looking for to know what type of tissue it is. All right. So even though there's going to be a lot of overlap, and you'll see pictures that are really similar on both of them, when you watch the lab video for tissues, I think it's called tissue identification lab video. When you watch that, it's going to break down every single tissue that you need to know for the test. All right. You've got a folder that has all of the images of the tissues that you need to know. And then, like I said, you've got a PowerPoint you can download and print off if you wanted to use that to study too. All right. You have a Connect assignment that is also on tissues. So all tissues this week. That assignment's a little different. I know the first Connect assignment you did was like a lot of drag and drop and like identifying different structures. For this one, you've got a little bit of that, but it's mostly going to be like, it's almost like a lecture review to me, I think is how I would view that. So it's going to get you to watch videos with like some background information on the different types of tissues. And then after you've watched that quick video, you're going to answer some questions on that too. All right. So as far as this week, that's all you have, that lecture video. Oh, and I meant to mention too, remember on the lecture videos, we didn't have one last week, but on this week, as soon as you get done watching the lecture video and you've gone through that material, I've got a Learn Smart assignment open for chapter 5 too. Remember, if you do that, you can earn 3 bonus points by doing the Learn Smart assignment. You could also earn 3 bonus points from chapter 1 Learn Smart. So if you'll do all these, really does help you out. All right. Okay, so next week, here's the really important stuff we need to talk about. You've got your first 2 exams next week. I know that sounds miserable. I promise I don't hate you. I'm not doing that to punish you. These 2 exams overlap a lot of the same material. So honestly, if it were me, if I studied really hard for the lecture exam, I would want to go ahead and take the lab exam right after that because it's so much of the same material. All right. So like the different body cavities, you had to know that for the lecture exam. You're also going to see it on the lab exam. The different tissue types. Now on the lecture exam, you need to know their characteristics, but on the lab exam, you're going to need to be able to identify them and like type the name of the tissue in. So again, it's a lot of overlap. The way I've got this set up, I'm giving you 2 days to do each of the exams. So on Monday and Tuesday, so this is September 14th and 15th next week, that is when your lecture exam is going to be. I haven't finished it yet, but it's going to be somewhere. I don't want to say a number because, like I said, I haven't finished it yet. but I'm going to say somewhere in the 70-ish range number of questions. It'll be multiple choice. You might have a little bit of matching in there too. But it won't be, like essays or like type out the answers on your own or anything like that. It'll be multiple choice or matching. All right. There might be, I think I mentioned in the chapter 1 video, lecture video, that there's a abdominal regions question. There's a batch of questions on the abdominal regions that you'll need to know. So that's the only visual thing that you'll see on the test, I believe. Let me really think hard, but I'm pretty sure that's the only visual thing that you'll see on the lecture test on Monday and Tuesday. All right. Wednesday, no test scheduled, so you got a day to recuperate. And then Thursday and Friday, so the 16th and 17th, that is when your lab exam is going to be. That test, remember, lab exams, you have to know the names. There are not word banks or multiple choice or anything. So on the lab exams, you'll have to know the name. If you see a picture of a tissue that we covered in the video this week, it'll say, name this tissue, and you'll have to type in, simple squamous epithelium. Some of those words might not be familiar, so when you're studying, make sure you get familiar with the phrases and the words too. All right. You also need to know what category those tissues belong to, and I cover all this in the tissue video. But you'll have to know if it's epithelial tissue or connective or muscle or nervous. And then all the stuff we did last week in the body organization, like you might see pictures of those models that are in the PowerPoint and they were in the video last week, and they'll ask you to name one of the cavities, so like right pleural cavity or pericardial cavity. You'll need to know the body planes like sagittal and mid-sagittal. There are study guides for both of those tests. In the learning materials, if you go to Unit 1, there's a study guide there for all of the lecture test material. And then if you go to labs, there's a folder that says Lab Exam 1 material. There's a study guide in there as well. All right, so you can prepare. And then definitely this week, send me a message if you just come up with something you're curious about like how's the test going to be. Send me a message and I'll be glad to help you with that. All right, but just be preparing because the tests are coming up soon. Okay. All right, if you need anything, let me know and I'll be glad to help.